We also know that Pakistan is in this extended fund facility program, and there was some contradictory news items in mainstream media about the fate of that program. And we also know that there is rescheduling of existing debts, both from multilateral as well as from Paris Club. Is it for 1 year or is it for 2.5 years? What are the strings attached to it? Will it be converted into another debt which would have to then be paid back? How, etc. So again, Teresa would educate us on that. And another point on which I'm quite interested to learn from Teresa. When a country is in extended fund facility program, it's quite easy to understand its budget making process. So most of the time, the countries who are in any extended fund facility program with the IMF, they do some sort of reverse engineering. They take their quantitative targets and performance indicators as a starting point, and then they do a reverse engineering and they try to match revenue with expenditures. Of course, this is quite peculiar time. We are in this extended fund facility program. We have secured this RFI, and we are also in the budget making, and budget making for the next fiscal year in very uncertain environment where we don't know how long will this pandemic take to ease the situation for coming to business on a new normal. So of course, one can't expect that in next fiscal year the business would go back to the normal that was the pre-COVID situation. But again, getting used to the new normal, there is some sort of uncertainties. United Nations is also warning of severe food crisis that may follow this pandemic. Global recession, severe food crisis, engagement with IMF, engagement with the multilateral, our review with the FATF, of course, even the latest press release, it also indicates that Pakistan will have to do, and very rightly do, fulfill the commitments on AML, anti-money laundering and counter-financing terrorism. But the new construction package, it gives some sort of amnesty to the investors who would invest in real estate till 31st of December 2020. And I was curious to know that whether it would be perceived as an exemption from that AML clause and amnesty clause by FATF and by IMF, or will be will be made accountable for this decision. So there are a quite complicated situation in which we have invited Teresa to come and speak to us. The format of today's session is that first of all, Teresa would be sharing her screen with us, and she would be showing a few slides on RFI. Then she would touch upon some topics that we have highlighted already, she knows on. And once that is done, then we'll open the floor for question answers. We will have different rounds of questions, and you can also write your question on the chat box. Those who will be writing the question on chat box, Teresa would also be reading it, and I'll be also reading it. So it will make my job much easier as moderator. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you very much to the SDPI for the opportunity to outreach and to explain what are we doing, what is our work, our thinking, and also to get reactions from you. I think this is always a very useful dialogue that helps us to do a better job. I hope everybody is doing well and everybody is keeping safe and is locked down and follow the instructions of the government to make sure that this crisis is over as soon as possible. Okay, so I'm going to start. I have a presentation that I think everybody will be able to see on the screen. These are around 8 slides. This is a presentation that draws on the RFI report that is now in the public domain. It's in the website of the IMF for those that have not consulted that website yet. The report is fully available with a lot of information. So I'm going to draw on that. And yeah, at the end, there will be an opportunity for question and answer on this presentation or the issue that could be of interest, and I will try to share as much as I know and as much as I don't know, because there are still a lot of unknowns, unfortunately. Okay, so the presentations, I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview, because I think it's important for everybody to understand what is going on, how is the response of the international community and the IMF in particular. And I mean, we are now in the phase of a global health crisis. For the first time, it's something new, and then it's a crisis that is affecting the economy, has an economic impact through different channels. And then, as you can see every day in the news, the IMF is taking a very a decisive and a strong role in helping countries to navigate these shocks. This is part of our mandate to assist our country members with policy advice, with lending, and to navigate these shocks. And I think this is a very important aspect to mention, because I believe it's going to be very helpful, and it's provide a lot of confidence that this will be over and we will be in a better shape after that. The IMF, our institution, is powerful, I would say, but it's limited. So we had to work with other development partners. So it's a very strong collaboration with the World Bank. They also have an important fire to use. The World Health Organization, they come with the knowledge and what is needed to be done. Asian Development Bank, I mean, only to list a few. The coordination now is more needed than ever than before. We are working like as a team very closely, and in order to respond quickly to what the governments are needed in terms of policy advice, technical assistance, and definitely identifying the financial support that is needed. And in that context, I think that it's very interesting that the IMF has mobilized quickly and put together a very strong toolkit of facility and instruments to help countries to respond to this economic impact, and including Pakistan. So, and then I would like to go through all of these instruments that are now, for the time being, available and have been mobilized. They are every day in the news. There are different initiatives, different announcements. Sometimes it's difficult to keep an eye on all of these initiatives and get understanding what is going on. That's why I thought it was important to go through all of these. I mean, the first thing that the IMF does when there is an emergency, is natural disaster, something that is unexpected, is we mobilize what we call the emergency financing. And this is done through two instruments: the Rapid Credit Facility, that is for low-income countries, and the Rapid Financial Instrument, that is for middle-income countries and emerging markets. These are a fast-track facility, meaning that they can be mobilized quickly, and everything, the paperwork, the approval process is done in a very record time, and can be disbursed very quickly. And some countries have been using that in the past. For instance, that in the year 2014 was used by Ecuador when there was an earthquake. And this is two facilities that there's a fund within the fund with $50 billion for the time being allocated to these two facilities. I think it's $10 billion for the Rapid Credit Facility and $40 billion for the Rapid Finance Instruments. This is the first line of response that we have, is very quick. Then in other countries, and then we have done that in the past, there is a possibility also of if there is already a program, sometimes it's easy to just augment it, the size of the program to accommodate the shocks. That depending on many circumstances, depending on how the program is defined, many things. That was, for instance, the instrument that was used during the Ebola crisis to help countries like Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. For instance, that was done in the past. Then another instrument that is being used and it's been now strengthening is the use of grants for debt relief. How this is done at the fund? What the fund does is that there is a fund as separated from the fund that is called the Catastrophe Containment and Relief Trust. This is a fund that is funding with donors' money, with donation from different countries. And then the fund use this money to provide grants to some countries. Most of them are very poor and with very vulnerable, most of them in African countries, for them to for them to be able to face the obligation that they has vis-a-vis the fund. No? So in the sense that it's like a debt forgiveness, they don't have to pay back to the fund, the obligation to the fund. We can use this fund. That also was used in the Ebola crisis for countries like Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone during 2014, and now has been reactivated and has been increased the volume of that fund, and it's going to be used again for a few countries. I think 25 countries has been identified so far. Then the other possibility is that in countries that they don't have any facility, then to put together a new facility, standby, for instance, standby arrangements that is very fast for some countries that may need it. This is not a preferred option because it takes a little bit of time. That's why we have the other emergency, but it also is possible. Some countries may prefer it depending on how they in which situation they ask. And then the other instrument that we are using, all the time on a continuous basis, is providing policy advice, capacity building, because as you can see, countries are now, for instance, redirecting budget allocation from one line to another. The central banks or supervisors are providing new regulatory rules for the financial sector, relaxing the way they interact with clients in a way that is preserving financial stability. All of this has mobilized the IMF experts to advise countries how to do that in a way that is well designed and creating the right incentive. And you can see that in the IMF, there is also a link that is called the policy trackers. So you go there, you click, you can see what are the action that each country has been implementing right now, and the IMF advice in that sense. I think also it's interesting to have a look. Okay, so now we go to Pakistan, but Pakistan is part of the IMF membership, and definitely we are working to support Pakistan in this difficult time. And before going to that, I mean, as is done in the report, I think it's interesting to understand where was Pakistan before the shocks, no? And to understand that this has been really a shock, no? Meaning that this has been completely changed the basically the Pakistan near-term outlook, as we will see. No, so the performance of the Pakistani economy before the virus was, I mean, it was satisfactory. We were actually quite happy because we saw that after a period of implementing difficult policies, stabilization policies, fiscal consolidation, monetary tightening, transition to a new exchange rate regime, etc., the economy was finally like turning the corner. No, that's how we saw it. No, we have an economy that is growing in a positive territory, coming back to higher growth rates over the next year, with an inflation that we haven't expected in January that we identified, but with a potential for inflation expectation to go down, a massive and important adjustment in the current account balance, so no risks coming from there, a strong fiscal discipline, primary balance that also was reduced, accumulation of reserves according to the objective under the program, and improving the revenue and grants, specifically tax revenues, because there was a lot of reforms that were implemented. Financial sector also doing okay, and a public debt that was projected to go down and over medium term and in a level that was sustainable. And this was done also in a context of reform actions that were taking place. I mean, let's make a short list for everybody to remember. No, this is a country that implemented the transition to a market-determined exchange rate, that was working on strengthening the SBP Act to make the central bank in line with best international practices, broadening the tax base. Everybody remember the action that were taken last year is, for instance, the elimination of several privilege and tax exemptions. There was an important strengthening the safety net with an increase in the BIS. The spending on health and education that is monitored, as you know, in the program very carefully, also showing some sign of increasing. A new public financial management law that is changing the way the budget is prepared and the budget is executed. A lot of work for the TSA, the Treasury Single Account. I can explain that, but we have been working on that a lot with the authorities. There was a strategy for the power sector, the circular debt reduction plan. You remember, work is being done. Is still on. Actually, we are working on that to change the SOE law and the SOE management. Plus all of the work that also has been done on the FATF that everybody knows. So that was the situation just before. Unfortunately, we were hit by that shocks. As I explained before, it's a shock that is global and is also domestic, has these two components. No? So and the main concern, I mean, it took a while to figure out all of this and to put together all of the information and to calibrate all of the numbers and everything. But at the end of the day, what we are seeing is that the COVID is altering significantly Pakistan near-term outlook through this channel, the external and the domestic channel. And also this is happening in a context that maybe I should have emphasized before, of a huge uncertainty. And this is unfortunately, for the time being, it's going to be like that. And it's an uncertainty that is affecting not only Pakistan, but also the whole world. Probably all of you who follow the World Economic Outlook, there is this periodic publication on numbers of projection for the whole world. And you saw that this time the team that put together the World Economic Outlook in Washington, they published only a few numbers per country. They reduced, because there's so much uncertainty, it's very difficult to put number for certain variables. So they focus on the big numbers that to give us a sense of what is going on, but it's extremely complicated. And but we had to do the work. We had to, I mean, we had to put number, we had to design policy, we had to act. You know, it's not, but it's complicated. And in Pakistan is acting in these two, through these two channels, no, the shocks. One is on the external front, and as everybody knows, is because there is a, I mean, first of all, the global downturn, the global lockdown that is now called, because everybody is at home, and this is we think that this is going to reduce potentially, I mean, the demand for Pakistan products by major partner, China, European Union, the US, and that's why we saw, we see export growth going down. Remittances, we also think that are expected to decline. We believe, I mean, it's difficult to put a number, but we have make an estimation that will be declining, because most of the remittances come from the Gulf countries. We know that, and they are also hit by the shocks, and also they are hit by the fact that oil prices also are going down. We will see that later. Outflow of non-residents could continue, because now the sentiment all over the world is to go back to a safe place, even if the return is zero or negative. But this is what is happening everywhere. Emerging markets are experiencing important outflows of forex resources going back home sometime. Then on the other hand, I mean, on a positive side, for countries that are demanding oil and they use oil as import oils, we are seeing that oil prices are going down substantially, and also the imports are being weaker. That also creates some kind of space, you know, on the current account, the deficits. Now, all of this put together is, as I said, is very uncertain. That could create a potential external financing needs. That way we came out with a number, and that is happening as unexpected. That's why it required a rapid response. No, that's why the decision to move ahead with a rapid financial instrument. Then we have also other channels that are operating domestically, as we know, no? And domestically, we see these different shocks, demand and supply, because I mean the supply is being reduced in many sectors because of the lockdown. The demand as well, because people are at home and they are not buying and purchasing, especially services, that could be very affected. That's why we believe that the Q4 of this year could be quite negative, and that may affect the growth projection for this year. Then it's extremely complicated to put a number. At the end of the day, different assumptions, different scenario. We believe could be minus 1.5. That is under an assumption that of a lockdown that could last for a little while, what is happening actually, and with all of these different variables that are changing also in the global environment, and with a rebound of the economy to a 2% next year. On inflation, we still see some inflation being in the double digit, and because of expectation, because also there are some prices that will need to be revised down the road. So inflation, we don't see that going down that much. The primary balance, I mean fiscal, I should have said here, we expect a deterioration, specifically because revenue collections are being affected because of the lockdown. Pakistan is going to need the different jurisdictions, the federal and private provinces. They're going to increase spending in health. They're increasing the social safety net, and so support employment, etc. So we see expenditure increases of the primary deficit. We believe will deteriorate this year. So in this scenario, I think the important thing was that the government of Pakistan put together a strong and decisive response. That I mean, I'm going to this. I mean, this is in the media. Everybody knows, but only to kind of make sure that this is something that is part of the strategy too. No, so there was a relief package. It was announced by the prime minister on March 24, if I remember well. That has different elements to provide resources for better medical equipment, support incomes for people in certain vulnerable sector of the population, support to the business community, then support some kind of basic activities like agriculture with the quick procurement, some prices, distribution of food to the utility store. So it's a very, have many dimensions, no? And this is something that we believe would be useful to support the economy. The State Bank of Pakistan also responded with a set of measures. One was the monetary accommodation, policy change in the policy monetary stance, with the rate cut to 9%, as last cut happened last week. Then also putting in place new refinancing facilities, some of them very specific for hospitals, some of them for new investment in the manufacturing sector, some other are to provide funding to companies for them not to lay off people, and then to have the liquidity, enough liquidity to maintain them on the payroll. And on the top of that, the State Bank of Pakistan also put temporary regulatory measures to make sure that the financial sector banks, they have more space to accommodate difficulties that their clients may have. No, so on them some regulatory parameters have been relaxed, listing some of them. No? For instance, the exposure to SME can be increased. Also the consumer loans, how the criteria to consumer loans, the deferment of payments in principle for 1 year, etc. So these are also measures that other countries have been implementing in the world as well, to facilitate this type of transactions with the financial sector while preserving financial stability, because it's very important that the whole system is preserved for the recovery. Okay, so then under these circumstances, so the the IMF we responded quickly, working together with the authorities of Pakistan, and then it was strong support for the response, and monetary accommodations is a response that many other countries, other emerging markets have used too, and we supported that always under the framework of keeping an eye on inflation. That is the concern is that it's still in double digits in Pakistan, so we have to be careful. Allowing the change rate to act as a shock absorber, and that's the role of the exchange rate. That's something that has been happening. The exchange rate has been, because other prices are changing as well. Oil prices are changing. Many other prices in the global and domestically are changing. So relative prices may need to change. So allowing that, but intervening if necessary to in the case of disorderly market conditions to keep a strong confidence. Then the fiscal and the SBP measure also in line with, as I said, with other countries are doing, in line with the IMF advice, well targeted to the shocks and temporary in nature. And the other thing that is also very important, as is explained in the report, is that all of this is done with an environment with the IMF, the authorities, and the IMF reiterate their commitment to continue working together, meaning that the policy and reforms are in the EFF. They are still there. It's not like they are not going to happen. This is an agenda that is we are. Actually, in some of the cases, technical assistance has not even stopped. We never stop working actually. So, but also, when you put together any assessment, any strategy, there are always risks, and then we have to evaluate these risks, and the risk of the drawbacks are happening in the background. One of them is that, unfortunately, in this environment, the efforts that Pakistan make to kind of contain public debt have been some of them has been reversed, unfortunately. So we are going to have a different scenario of a higher level of public debt, and then that we have to be careful. And then there are always risks that whatever scenario we have put together for Pakistan and from the world could be worse. We always need to be ready for the worst, and then to see if we can respond. Hopefully not. Hopefully it's the other way around. Then also we always have the capacity, the risk that we have to be careful that whatever actions are taken are implemented in full, and there are no slippages, and there are, the capacity issue. There are always complications. We have to make sure that this is not the case. And as I said, and the most important mitigating factor of this type of risk is always not going back to the anchor that provide the EFF for the policy making, that provide the EFF, because as I said, the policies and the reforms remain valid. Pakistan has to go back to tax reform, to power sector reform, to SOE reforms, PATAF, PFM, everything that is in the agenda. We have to go back, and that will be the way of Pakistan to go back to growth, to go back to put the debt in a sustainable level, to go back to create confidence, to create buffers, and to recover once as this crisis subsides. So okay, so this is the presentation that I have to make. Yeah, so I'm finished. I stop here.
Thank you very much, Teresa, for joining us. I know it's busy times for you, but you made it a point to be part of our webinar, educated us on many interesting things. And there's one thing there which is very clear, that in this deficit times, when we are seeing everything deficit, there are very clearly two deficits which are here, and that is trust deficit. Trust deficit on IMF and trust deficit on authorities, and that is why various misconceptions and various confusions those were arising. STPI always try to remain part of solution, and as part of bridging that trust deficit, we try to bring important stakeholders, important decision makers together, and we try to promote very candid discussion. And I'm glad that today's discussion was not only candid, it was quite informative. I thank all the participants for their interactive discussion and question, and I thank you, Teresa, for taking all the question and trying to respond them. With this, we'll conclude formally. The way forward of this webinar would be that we'll be writing our policy brief on it, and of course, we will try to pass on our recommendation to authorities at Q Block and to other relevant decision makers. Thank you, Teresa, once again for joining us.
Yeah, no, so let me say only a few words because I'm very grateful too, and also, maybe also to summarize that, I understand that people are very anxious. Everybody wants to know what is going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month. In these moments is extremely complicated. I personally, I am only the representative of the IMF in Pakistan. I don't have all of the answer, definitely, but I'm here to explain procedures, to explain how we work, to explain what is going on, if possible, to explain the documents, helping people to understand them. I will recommend everybody to read the document, because sometimes I have the impression, I'm very sorry about that, that people I heard something and they create stories and they make this type of belief, no? And it's important we are also trying to be rigorous and reading what is there, and then I can try to explain and help people to navigate what is going on. I see the next few weeks, not only in Pakistan, in the world, everything is going to be very fluid, changing, and we had to be patient. I will try to make myself available as much as possible to help people to understand what is going on, and this is something that also is I'm very grateful for this opportunity.